What's up guys, my name is Timbo and today we're talking about God of War, or as the internet likes to call it, Dad of Boy. God of War 4 came out last year to public and critical acclaim, being one of the highest rated and reviewed games to come out that year. It also won Game of the Year 2018. So yeah, it was pretty good. Being a soft reboot for the franchise, God of War 4 sees Kratos in a much different setting than before. Comparing it to the other games that came prior, this iteration is much more serious tonally, with an emphasis on cinematic storytelling. The storytelling is so dang cinematic that the camera doesn't even cut once throughout the entire game, which is something no one has done before, at least to my knowledge. There's just not enough time in this video to talk about how great this game is, but for what it's worth, God of War was easily my favorite game last year. You guys know the drill by now, as in this video, I'm gonna be walking you beat for beat through the story and explaining the ending. And just like last time, next week's video is going to be decided by a poll, the options being Spider-Man PS4 and the first oldie of the bunch, the original BioShock. You can cast your votes by following the link provided in the description and pinned comment. If you end up enjoying this video, leaving a positive rating is greatly appreciated, and for more content like this every week, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads. But without further ado, let's dive headfirst into fatherhood and whip this boy into shape. One thing to address right away is that Kratos has gone through quite a bit by the beginning of God of War. While this game was sort of a reboot and could be played independently, there may be some areas of Kratos' backstory that are confusing. I'm going to explain some of the most important key points throughout this video as I see fit. It won't replace the experience and knowledge you'd have if you played the original God of War games, but it's something. And I know I've mentioned this before, but these videos aren't meant to replace the experience you'll get from playing these games for yourself. And with something as good as God of War, just saying, this is a game you really should play. The game begins several decades after Kratos took vengeance on the Olympian gods, now being seen doing more casual, less intense activities, like chopping down trees and being rude to his young son Atreus.
Found some.
Get in the boat, boy.
Now somehow living in ancient Norway in the Norse realm of Midgard, Kratos and Atreus are prepping Kratos' second wife Faye for a proper cremation. The game kind of explains how Kratos is in the world of a Norse mythology now instead of the usual Greek, but the most important thing to know is that we are not in Olympus anymore. Faye's last wish was for her ashes to be spread at the highest peak in all of the 9 realms. Seems simple enough, but it's this plot point that ends up driving our entire journey. Kratos carries his wife's body outside, lights it on fire, gives his son Faye's knife, and the two begin Atreus' training for the journey ahead.
What are we hunting?
You are hunting deer.
Which way?
In the direction of deer.
It doesn't take long before Kratos and Atreus run into their first form of opposition, known as Draugrs, which are basically like animated corpses. The reason I'm mentioning this is because it's the first time where we get to see Kratos use the Leviathan Axe. The Leviathan Axe is single-handedly one of the best sounding and feeling weapons in any game ever. It looks cool, it sounds punchy, it satisfyingly can be called back to you at any moment, and it has a surplus of upgrades and additional abilities that unlock as you progress through the game. Kratos and Atreus find the deer they've been chasing, ending with Atreus landing a successful hit. Good job, boy. Kratos helps his son finish the job, only for the two to be surprised by a big old troll.
Atreus!
We're gonna fight that?
We have no choice.
After taking down the troll, the two head back home. It's not long before Kratos and Atreus have a visitor confront them at their door. Kratos does his best job of telling the stranger to leave, but it has no effect on him. What seems like would be an easy fight for Kratos turns into a life or death battle, as the stranger reveals his godlike powers, including the fact that he can feel no pain. Still, Kratos is the protagonist, and we are only like 20 minutes into this game, so of course, Kratos ends up killing the stranger. The unsafe environment of the house urges Kratos to leave and take Atreus on the journey early, despite him knowing his son is not ready for the dangers of Midgard. On the way, the two befriend the Witch of the Woods, named Freya. Despite the fact that Atreus shot her friend with an arrow, she shows kindness towards them and wishes them good luck on their journey. Kratos and Atreus row their boat right into the Lake of the Nine, where they are encountered by a giant creature.
What is this?
While in early trailers the World Serpent was believed to be a massive enemy to battle, Jormungandr, who is the last remaining giant I might add, turns out to be a friendly dude, and is one of the many reasons why this game is so dang atmospheric and cool. On their way to Midgard's peak, Kratos encounters the Black Mist, which is basically a dumb reason the game gives you to prolong playtime. Freya appears and tells them that the light of Alfheim can help them navigate through the mist. So, Kratos and Atreus do just that, traveling back to the Lake of Nine and heading over to the realm of Alfheim. They're able to do so by using the Bifrost, which is basically a bridge that allows people to cross over from realm to realm. Freya gave it to them because she's all magical and nice. As you might expect, Alfheim isn't anything like it was described to be, now a dark and beaten down war-infested land ruled by the Dark Elves. Kratos uses his godlike powers to fight through the Dark Elves and secure the light. When he does this, Kratos experiences a vision and hears from Faye. Atreus is able to pull Kratos out of the vision, yelling at him for leaving him behind. What felt like a few moments was actually several hours for Atreus, and this serves as one of the first of many tensions that grow between the father and son duo. Beneficial for them though, Kratos and Atreus end up restoring all of the light to Alfheim, allowing the Light Elves to reclaim their home from the Dark Elves. Atreus and Kratos travel back to Midgard and use the light of Alfheim to penetrate through the Black Mist. Things are never all that simple though, as while climbing they soon run into a giant dragon. Kratos, with the help of Atreus, is able to take down the giant monster in one of the game's most epic boss battles. Continuing upwards, they overhear a conversation coming from the peak of Midgard. One of these men is the stranger from before, alive and referred to as Baldur. Baldur is there with his nephews, Modi and Magni, the sons of Thor. They're talking to a man imprisoned inside a tree named Mimir, who is said to be the smartest man alive. They ask Mimir for the whereabouts of Kratos, but he chooses to remain silent. Kind of awkwardly, right as Baldur leaves, Kratos and Atreus appear. Mimir tells them that where they stand on Midgard is not the highest peak in all the realms, and instead they need to travel to Jotunheim, the homeland of the giants. This doesn't seem too bad at first, but then Mimir reveals that travel to Jotunheim has been blocked off to keep out Odin and Thor, cause in this universe, they're kind of big jerks. Being the smartest man alive though, Mimir claims to know another passage to Jotunheim, and offers Kratos and Atreus his help.
What do we do?
Yes!
First, you need to cut off my head.
Wait, what?
Kratos obeys Mimir's odd instructions and takes him to the Witch of the Woods to be revived. Despite the two not being the best of friends, Freya uses her magic to revive Mimir, turning him into a quirky talking head of knowledge that Kratos will wear on his belt for the remainder of the game. Mimir not only earns a place in the plot, but he also serves as a clever and really natural way to integrate lore and backstory on many of the game's other characters and locations. Knowing that Kratos is a god, Mimir and Freya warn him that he must tell Atreus of his true nature, but Kratos distrusts them and remains silent. This is a very large plot point and theme throughout the game, as Kratos tries to hide the fact that he's a god from Atreus. Kratos does so to protect Atreus out of fear that his son might make the same mistakes he did, which, if you're unaware, was murdering all of the Olympian gods, including his father, Zeus. This delves into the question of if parents should hide their past and mistakes from their children out of protection. With the help of Jormungandr, who Mimir can surprisingly communicate with, the three are able to explore new areas in the Lake of Nine. One of those areas being where the components needed to open Jotunheim's portal lie. The region is covered by the corpse of a giant named Thamur, who was killed by Thor with his own chisel when attempting to build a wall around Jotunheim to protect his people. Their journey is halted by Magni and Modi, who stop them in their tracks. Kratos battles them, with the fight ending in the death of Magni. Modi is able to escape as rage builds up in Atreus, causing him to fall ill. On the way back, Kratos and Atreus encounter Modi again, who Kratos gives a second proper smackdown. Not knowing what's happening, the group heads back to Freya, who explains that Atreus is suffering from a mental contradiction that occurs when a god believes himself to be mortal. She tells Kratos that he must retrieve the heart of the keeper of the Bridge of the Damned, which is one hell of a name, cause this heart is in Helheim. See what I did there? The task to save his son seems simple enough. However, Kratos' Leviathan Axe will prove useless in Helheim. And what comes next is easily one of, if not hands down, the best part of this entire game. As in order to save Atreus, Kratos is forced to head back home and face his past. That past being unearthing the Blades of Chaos, the signature weapon Kratos has always been known to wield in previous games. In the first God of War game, Kratos was a Spartan warrior who became involved in a losing battle with barbarians. In order to win, Kratos called out to Ares, pledging his allegiance in exchange for victory. Ares accepted the offer, giving Kratos strength to win the battle, and granting him the Blades of Chaos. The blades corrupted Kratos, turning him more violent and merciless than ever before. This eventually caused him to accidentally murder his own wife and daughter during a raid on a village of Athena's followers. Stricken with grief and horror over his uncontrollable rage, Kratos burned the bodies of his family. He was later cursed and forced to wear the ashes of his family, from that day forward making him known as the Ghost of Sparta. Kratos would use the blades to exact revenge on Ares, as well as all of the other Olympian gods for other various reasons. Mainly anger management issues. It's mentioned that Kratos has vowed to never use the blades again and has even attempted several times to dispose of them. However, the blades seemingly always have a weird way of finding their way back to Kratos. Meant to be a permanent reminder of Kratos' original pledge to Ares, the blades were chained to Kratos and seared to his flesh, which he's now been hiding with bandages wrapped around his forearms. Throughout the game, Kratos has been running from the man he once was, hiding it from himself and his son Atreus. But now with no other options, Kratos comes face to face with his past. A scene that was so powerful, it made Kratos actor Christopher Judge cry while filming.
A lot of this performance, for me, is a love letter to my kids. It's an apology. Yeah. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
And you best believe I'm gonna let this entire thing play out.
There's nowhere you can hide, Spartan. Put as much distance between you and the truth as you want. It changes nothing. Pretend to be everything you are not. Teacher, husband, father. But there is one unavoidable truth you will never escape. You cannot change. You will always be a monster.
I know. But I am your monster no longer.
Kratos heads on over to Helheim, which as you would expect, is just one splendid looking place. He's able to retrieve the heart rather easily, but does stumble upon a haunting vision of Zeus on his way out. Kratos goes back to Freya and she is able to cure the boy. Unable to deny it any longer, Kratos comes clean to Atreus and reveals that he is a god, even giving him some lessons on responsibility and how to kick some booty. On their way back to spread those gosh darn ashes already, Atreus ignores everything Kratos literally just told him and turns into a little punk, gaining a ton of arrogance after learning of his godhood. The little brat even goes as far as to straight up murder a weakened Modi, and soon Kratos realizes his worst nightmare. His son inherited Kratos' anger management problems. Dear Jesus, help us all. At Midgard's peak again, ready to finally head to Jotunheim, Baldur shows up again to ruin everything. Atreus, thinking that he can stop Baldur on his own, shoots Kratos with an arrow. The portal gets destroyed, but that ends up being the least of our problems, as Baldur grabs Atreus and hops on a giant dragon. Kratos and Baldur ensue in an intense aerial battle, which ends with them getting thrust back deep in Helheim. After landing and getting Atreus back from Baldur, Kratos teaches us all a lesson on how to properly discipline children.
You will listen to me and not speak a word.
I am your father, and you, boy, are not yourself. You are too quick to temper. You are rash, insubordinate, and out of control. This will not stand.
On their journey out of Helheim, Kratos and Atreus try to avoid Baldur to the best of their abilities. While sneaking around him, rather large details about Baldur come to light. It turns out Freya is Baldur's mother, and it was her who cast the spell on him. While it was an attempt to protect him from all pain, the spell took all sensations, good and bad, away from Baldur. This overprotective move by Freya caused Baldur to only resent his mother. Atreus and Kratos encounter some more visions from Zeus while battling on a spooky-looking pirate ship and are eventually able to escape Helheim and return to Midgard. Since Mimir is super smart and the fact that the plot must go on, Mimir realizes that there is yet another way to reach Jotunheim, this time through the use of recovering his missing eye. But as always, there's a catch. Much earlier in the game, Jormungandr took a giant bite out of a statue of Thor. Side note, Jormungandr hates Thor. Interestingly, Mimir's eye was around that Thor statue, meaning Jormungandr accidentally ate it. And just when you thought this game couldn't get any freaking cooler, it's time to head inside the World Serpent. Inside Jormungandr's stomach, Kratos and Atreus are able to locate Mimir's eye. Just as they do, rumblings can be heard outside. But those noises aren't some weird indigestion. The group gets swung back over to Tharmir's corpse again, as Baldur comes out of the water like he's a freaking vampire or something. Before battling yet again, Freya intervenes in an attempt to protect her son from Kratos, going as far as taking control over Thamir's dead body. This final boss, like every other big boss fight in the game, does not disappoint. And I know I only mentioned this once at the beginning, but the camera follows the action the entire time, making all of these encounters even more epic and immersive. During the fight, Baldur is pierced by Atreus' mistletoe arrow, which ends up breaking Freya's spell on him. This plot point was foreshadowed much earlier in the game at one of their first meetings, when Freya had this confusing reaction to Atreus' arrows.
These arrows are dangerous. They're wicked. You find any more, you destroy them, understand? Do you understand? Say it!
I understand.
So yeah, Baldur can feel pain now, which you may think is a bad thing, but the crazy dude actually loves it. Kratos is able to finally give Baldur the proper beatdown he deserves, and you best believe he can now feel every single hit. In the end, to prove a point to his son, Kratos chooses to show Baldur mercy, sparing his life. However, Baldur takes full advantage of this. Filled with rage and resentment, he attempts to kill Freya. Surprisingly enough, Freya doesn't even try to stop Baldur, believing she deserves death for casting the spell on him. But this choice wasn't part of Kratos' deal, as in his mind, kids need to stop killing their freaking parents already. So he decides to take matter into his own hands.
Why do you even care? You could have walked away.
The cycle ends here. Must be better than this.
Grieving over his death, Freya swears revenge on Kratos and taunts him for hiding his true nature from Atreus. But Kratos is still riding high on his "I'm a total badass" mindset and continues to be a complete and utter badass.
Boy, listen close. I'm from a land called Sparta. I made a deal with the god that cost me my soul. I killed many who were deserving, and many who were not. I killed my father.
That was your father in hell. Is this what it is to be a god? Is this how it always ends? Sons killing their mothers? Their fathers?
No. We will be the gods we choose to be. Not those who have been. Who I was is not who you be. We must be better.
Freya leaves with Baldur's corpse and Mimir tries to show some optimism, hoping that she will move on from the tragedy and learn that Kratos did the right thing. The fact that there's gonna be a sequel to this game tells me she's probably gonna hold a grudge. And after all of this crazy nonsense, Kratos reminds Atreus that they still need to spread Faye's ashes. You know, the entire initial goal of this journey. And finally, the group is able to travel to Jotunheim uncontested. Kratos temporarily leaves Mimir's head with two brothers named Brock and Sindri, who yes, I know I have completely negated up until this point. While they're both really likable, comedic relief type of characters with a small side plot, they mainly serve to help upgrade Kratos' gear, so I cut them for time. I didn't want to ignore them on purpose, I just didn't think they were integral to the main storyline. Either way, Atreus and Kratos head into Jotunheim, which if you can remember, was shown in one of the visions Kratos experienced in Alfheim. The two soon find a temple with murals depicting their adventures, revealing that the giants had foreseen everything that would happen, which is a pretty crazy detail to wrap your head around. In addition to this, Kratos and Atreus discover that Faye was a giant herself, one that decided to stay behind in Midgard. This means that Atreus is part mortal, god, and giant. Not a bad genetic combo if you ask me. The fights with Baldur were on the mural as well. This is important because Kratos realizes that Baldur was looking for Faye the entire time, not him. And if you go back and listen to some of Baldur's initial lines, it makes sense that he was looking for a giant. The dialogue is vague enough to fit the description of a giant who is supposed to be in Jotunheim but is actually in Midgard, and also the description of Kratos, who is a god from Olympus hiding out in Midgard. Only at the time, Baldur had no way of knowing this. What an awkward misunderstanding. And after what seemed like forever, Kratos and Atreus finally fulfill Faye's promise and spread her ashes at the peak of Jotunheim, the highest point in all the realms. And it doesn't take long to realize why this was Faye's final wish. On the way back, Atreus tells Kratos that he noticed something else. The murals gave him a different name, revealing that Faye wanted to name him Loki, and we all know what that means. Regardless, Kratos tells Atreus he named him after a compassionate Spartan comrade that he used to know. While the game technically ends here, if you actually decide to walk back home, a secret ending plays. Ooh, and boy oh boy, is it some nice bait. And that, guys, is the story of God of War explained from start to finish. Hopefully you found this video helpful, refreshing, entertaining, whatever reason you decided to watch. I know there were plenty of things I left out, and while I don't enjoy negating certain aspects of the story, these videos are made to include the most important details. With that being said, God of War has tons of other lore and backstory on characters like Thor, Odin, and Jormungandr. I also mentioned Brock and Sindri. There's plenty of smaller side quests, other realms, as well as Valkyrie missions that are sure to make you break your controller at least once. And there's also several theories that try to predict what's gonna happen next. If any or all of those things interest you, make sure to let me know down in the comments and I can cover it sometime down the road. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like is greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Also, don't forget to click the link provided and vote in the poll for next week's episode. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.